Welcome back, Magic Makers. I am Cheryl, aka the Funny Godmother, a woman with many sides. I am a user experience designer, author, gamer, traveler, streamer, actress, lots of things. And here on this channel, we talk about really anything about my past you want to talk about, my past career, experience, the industry, technology, acting, all kinds of things. And today I want to talk to you about a topic that came up in my Discord. I used to be a voice user experience designer on projects like Cortana and Alexa. Now, voice user experience designer does not mean that I was choosing the voice of the device. Instead, it's something really what we call it is conversation design. We are shaping the way a person interacts with their voice or language with a particular device. And as part of that process, you have to become pretty familiar with the way the hardware works because voice user interface design relies on microphones, and microphones are an analog capture system. The difference in a smart speaker from some of the previous voice interaction options that were available is the wake word, at least as smart speakers exist today. The wake word was really what unlocked a whole bunch of new opportunities. That and the far field microphones. So when the Alexa system launched, when the Amazon Echo launched, it launched with microphones that could recognize speech 3 to 10 feet away, which in itself was something new. Up until then, you had voice recognition systems in cars and things like that, but they were pretty close range, like 1 to 3 feet. But that premise, placing a microphone in a room, comes with a lot of baggage. Are you going to turn the microphone on all the time? I know. And so a lot of people are understandably pretty concerned about microphones in their home. And I am not here to tell you to stop being concerned about microphones in your home because, surveillance economy exists. You need to question the businesses you do business with. So absolutely keep that curiosity. But let's just talk about functionality here and be super pragmatic for a second. So when we're thinking about a smart speaker placed in a home, if I'm Amazon, it actually takes a lot of computing power to process what someone says and turn it into understanding. Because sound is like a big wavy line, analog line, and there's a bunch of computing that has to happen to turn it into the digital representation of actual speech. So it's actually pretty expensive, and that's why all of your smart speakers need an internet connection. If you've ever noticed, if you disconnect the Wi-Fi and try to talk to an Alexa or an OK Google, it will tell you it's having trouble connecting. It's not good at that. So it's pretty expensive to run a cloud service and push a bunch of speech there to recognize. Now, can you imagine if everyone in the world, all of the conversations that all of the Echo devices could hear were being sent to those servers simultaneously? I don't think we have enough cloud servers in the world to process that much speech. It's just not practical. And having worked for Amazon, they are too frugal to do that kind of stuff, no matter how much they might be interested in surveilling everything that everyone says for marketing purposes. It's just not practical yet. Now, if computing power gets there, we should have this conversation again. But as of now, and when the Echo launched, that's just not practical. So what did they do about that? That's where the wake word comes in. Alexa, the name Alexa, was actually very carefully chosen, much to the chagrin of people actually named Alexa. And that's a whole other can of worms. But that X sound differentiates the word from a lot of other common words in the English language. And what it enables it to do is it enables the device to listen for its name and fairly reliably distinguish it from other words that may be coming up in conversation. And as a result, these devices can essentially ignore all of the ambient speech until they hear their name. Now think of this like having a significant other in a relationship that's probably not going to work out. Humans, our ears, we don't really turn off the hearing part. We can't turn off the hearing. You know, if there are sounds that annoy you, you can't just click a button like the mic mute button on the Alexa and turn it off. Like the sound comes in all the time. What we do is we stop listening. We attenuate. We listen only for specific signals, and that's what's happening on a Google Home device or an Alexa Echo device. Is the devices are listening for a very specific signal, the wake word or wake phrase. So, okay, Google, Alexa, or Echo, whatever you have it set to. And the special sauce when Alexa came out was that the device could process that word locally without sending all the speech to the internet, thus saving Amazon all of the cost of sending all the speech to the servers all the time. It took them a lot of effort to do that, because it's actually very complicated to do speech recognition without that cloud processing. And that's why you can't name your device any arbitrary thing, because they've locked up all of the logic for the very specific words they've chosen, Alexa, Echo, computer, and Amazon, on the device itself, so that it doesn't need an internet connection. If you could name it anything at all, it would be sending your speech to the cloud all the time, and you don't want that. You don't want that. So, being able to listen for its name and distinguish its name without ever sending your speech to the cloud is a big deal. Because that means even though it's a microphone and it's plugged in, it's hearing you. Like the sound is hitting the microphone. Just like your sort of not great significant other who hears you but isn't listening to you until they hear their name. The system's doing the same thing. It's hearing you, but it's not listening to you until it hears its name. And then it starts recording that snippet of speech and takes that sound and sends it to the server. Now, once it's sent to the server, that whole thing is processed so that we can turn the sound wave into some sort of digital representation of what you said, so that we can act on it and turn it into something called an intent. What we believe you wanted to do when you spoke those words. The wake word allows the system to ignore everything else you're saying, hear it, but only take action and only send your speech to the cloud and to the company when it hears its name. Now again, I'm not here to tell you that all systems do this. In fact, not all systems that use like the Alexa system do this, which makes it even more complicated. Third-party systems, they're not guaranteed to do this. Only the Echo systems do this necessarily. So it's complicated. When we talk about headlines, like the one I'm about to show you, there's a distinction between the hearing of your speech and the listening, like the recording of it and sending it to the server and processing it into something that approaches understanding and saving it on the servers. They're two different things. This is not to say that we shouldn't be critical and we shouldn't question companies, but there's some subtlety here, much like there's subtlety in significant others not listening. And by the way, my husband's great. That's not a problem, but it's a good metaphor, and I have experienced it in past relationships. So let's take a look at the article. So here's the article that was brought up in my Discord. The headline is designed to be incendiary. Google admits employees listen to conversations recorded by Google Assistant. So let's dig in a little bit. In standby mode, the device processes short snippets of audio to detect an activation, like when you say, "Hello, Google." So that's what I'm talking about there. The device processes those local snippets of audio to figure out whether it's hearing its name. If no activation is detected, those audio snippets won't be sent or saved to Google. So that's just what I was talking about. The listening versus the hearing. The device is hearing things, but if it doesn't, but it's only listening for its name, and it only takes action when it hears its name. This is important to note. These devices are not always great at what we call endpointing. starting and ending the recording. So it's not always exact. It can capture a few seconds before your wake word and a few seconds after your wake word if it hears its name. So, admittedly, if you were to shout your social security number right before saying, okay, Google, that, might get caught up in the recording. That is a risk. They also point out that by default, they don't retain your audio recordings. So you have to opt in to them keeping the audio recordings. So this employees listen to conversations recorded. If you're not saving the recordings by default, there's no way employees can listen to them. So you can see how it's a little bit incendiary there. If you opt in to saving your voice history, that does, as part of their terms of service, part of that does allow employees to check in on certain recordings to match them with, to figure out whether or not what the device did is what it was supposed to do. And I know this because I worked on Alexa and we had a similar program. Alexa has an opt-out model, which is not as good. Really, the only way to improve natural language understanding systems right now, hopefully we'll get better, but is we need humans to look at what the system interpreted and what it did, and then listen to the sound, figure out whether that was the correct interpretation of the situation. We can't have the computer check its work because it will come to the same conclusion. We need a person. Now, if we had a different computer able to check it, I don't know, maybe that would work. But right now it's humans. Now, I can't speak to the way Google does it, but when I was at Amazon, I was part of a team that had access to recordings. They were always anonymized. We never had access to the name of the person who the recordings were paired to. They were always kind of disconnected. It was like, we need to look at the performance on Play Music. And so here's some sample Play Music recordings. Let's go check and see whether or not these are recordings we think failed. These are recordings we think succeeded. Let's go check a couple of them and make sure they worked. So really the only concern is, could there have been something sensitive and personally identifiable that occurred during the time that you were also saying something that got associated with one of those intents? Now, admittedly, sometimes the system gets it wrong. There was a situation years ago where an Alexa, somehow a couple accidentally triggered an Alexa device to send messages to someone on their contact list, and it just arbitrarily recorded them talking about home improvement or something. Now, that was not a great situation. There should have been confirmation dialogues in place that prevented accidental sending of messages. That should not have occurred. So obviously, people bringing up security concerns is absolutely right. You should bring these things up. But when we phrase it like, employees listen to conversation, there's a lot there. That makes it sound like folks are just kind of picking up the phone and listening to a whole conversation in context, and that is not actually the case. You get a couple of seconds of a snippet, and you're doing it in the context of I want to see whether or not people actually managed to set that timer correctly. And I don't know who it is, and I don't know really anything else about it. I'm just looking to see whether or not it transcribed what they said correctly, and whether it paired it with the correct intent, and whether it happened correctly. That's all we're looking for. I do appreciate that while it is an incendiary headline, they do provide helpful guidance about how to protect your own privacy. So it's good to be informed. Now, this is a tricky, I struggle with this because it's a tricky problem. It's a tricky communications problem. Amazon seems to, as of the most recent information I am able to find, have an opt-out philosophy on the saving of the voice history. So if you want to enjoy your privacy there, this UI is not going to be accurate. But let's see if we can switch there. There's this was in 2019, so the UI has absolutely changed because they change the Alexa UI every 5 minutes. But there's an opt-out where you can turn off. At the time it was called Manage How Your Data Improves Alexa, which, is obfuscating it a little. I don't love the phrasing, but it does turn off their ability to do the review, as we were just discussing before. And they do confirm only a sampling of recordings are manually reviewed. That's the same thing as the Google article was talking about. So it's not like only Google does it. So as of the best of my knowledge right now, Amazon's model is a little bit different, a little bit not as good. You have to opt out of saving your voice history. There is a voice command to delete your voice history instantly, though, which is good to know, which is Alexa, delete everything I said today, which is a fun nuclear option. Just run around saying that all the time. Just clean up after yourself all the time. And you can apparently also say, Alexa, delete what I just said. So 2 ways without going and changing that setting where you can give yourself some immediate privacy if you accidentally blurt out your social security number while setting a timer. Good to know. On one hand, you want to be transparent. You want to, help people understand exactly what's going on under the hood. On the other hand, that's a lot to expect of any one customer. It's kind of like pushing all this burden on them. And you can't expect everybody to go and educate themselves on how natural language interfaces and local wake words and all this stuff works, and cloud processing of natural language understanding. It's a lot. It takes people whose actual job it is to do this stuff a while to learn how the systems work. I teach people who want to learn to do voice design how these things work. So, some random customer who has no desire to be paid for these things may not be motivated to do this. But obviously, we're still not hitting I think there's still some room for a more customer-friendly way of communicating what's going on. Because right now, I think we're really just we're communicating things the way that this article, in standby mode, the device processes short snippets of audio to detect an activation. Well, yes, that is technically true. But is a person going to, are they going to take that in and understand it and feel like they can make good decisions with that information? I don't know about that. I do Star Trek improv, and if you look at original series Star Trek, they use a lot of metaphors. It's just like blowing up a balloon. And they do that because the people watching the show are not scientists, but you want them to go along with the show and you believe in what's going on. The people who are using these devices are not speech scientists, and you want them to believe in the product. So meet them halfway, maybe? So it's important for us to question. It's important for us to ask these questions. It's important for us to want to understand whether or not we've got a device that's actively listening all the time or just hearing us and just ignoring us like the bad significant other. And I want to point out, too, that it's really interesting when I speak internationally because there's a much different relationship with corporations in different countries. So in the United States, we've been it's been surprising how much people are like, yes, welcome microphones into our homes. At first, when I wasn't on the Alexa team and they announced the Echo, I was like, and she's going to yell it again. I'm going to turn that. I don't know. Maybe that stopped it. I don't know. At first, when I was on the Alexa team, or when I wasn't on the Alexa team, I'm just going to cut this part out. At first, when that device came out, a lot of people were very suspicious, very suspicious that this would work. They're very skeptical. I think CNET gave it a terrible review at first. And then they came around, made it an editor's choice. So there's that. But Americans trust corporations. And it's changed a lot since 2016, but in 2016, people really trusted Amazon. In the era of Jeff Bezos launching himself to space, maybe not. People were just like, oh, okay, they have good customer service. They would probably have my best interests at heart. But when I go abroad, especially Germany or a country like that, where they have much different policies around corporations and relationships, why should I trust a company to put a microphone in my home? And I'm like, You shouldn't. I'm not here to tell you that you should. But interestingly, they trust the government a lot more. Like, and it's possible, hypothetically, that maybe they would believe that a microphone from the government would be okay, whereas we would be like, whoa, 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 no, thank you, no. Global culture is interesting. The things that you assume are true are not true for everyone else. Anyway, fun discussion. Security and privacy in voice user interfaces is a fraught subject. And there's more we could talk about. Like, this is the players that are trying to be good. There are devices that were not trying to be good and have caused like problems in the EU and things like that. But we're not going to go into that right now because this video would be too long. So for now, we're just going to close it there and say, just think of your device, if you have a first party from Google or Amazon, if you have a first party device, as a bad significant other. They are hearing you, but they're only listening for their name. And only when they hear their name, that's when they're going to send stuff to the cloud and process it and all that. So there you have it, a tour, a detailed look at how some of the smart speakers in our life actually work. If you enjoyed this video, if you want more deep dives into some of the technology I've worked on before, if you wanted just more of my magical potpourri of video game development history and game design stuff and user experience teardowns and acting stuff, ideas from my improv career, hit the subscribe button because we're going to have all of that. And you can always comment down below about things you're interested in hearing about. So I look forward to hearing from you. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and keep making that magic, everybody. Until next time.